Hey, this is Mr. Coker with Foundations of Algebra, Lesson 6-2, Solving Two-Step Equations. So, the rules for two-step equations are pretty much just the same as one step. You're solving for the variable, you're doing inverse operations, and whatever you do to one side, you have to do to both sides. Literally, the only difference is you've got two numbers to get rid of to do inverse operations on instead of one. However, I'm going to go through three examples. Two of them are up here, but you can see I kind of ran out of space on my board. So I'm going to go through three examples. The first one's going to be probably the most basic two-step equation, and then I'm going to do two that are a little bit different, but they follow the same process, but each one has a kind of a, I don't want to put it, like it's a special circumstance. I'll explain in a moment. So the first one says 3x plus 7 equals 19. Okay, just like with the one-step equation, I'm going to start by drawing a line down the middle. Also, just like the one-step equation, I'm going to look at what is going on, and I'm going to do inverse operations. Now, what I'm about to say, it might look a little bit confusing because, especially if you know how to do it, you might say, oh, I'm overcomplicating. There's a reason for this. So, we have to decide which number do we want to move first. Obviously, we're solving for x. We have an x, that's our variable. We want to get x by itself. So, we have to remove a 3 and remove a 7. The 3 is being multiplied. Remember, if there's nothing in between, no sign, no operation in between a number and a variable, it's being multiplied. And there's a plus 7. So, obviously we're going to move out, we're going to do the opposite of times 3 and the opposite of plus 7. We have to know what order. Now I'm going to start by doing it incorrectly. So, I'll keep that in mind. If I started out by dividing by 3 and saying I'm going to remove this 3, this is what I would have to do. I would have to divide everything by 3. Now I can do that, but if I do that, I'll have x plus 7 over 3 equals 19 over 3, and then I'll have to minus 7 over 3 on each side, and then I'll have to simplify. You can do it. I don't advise it. It's way too much work. That's the thing. You can do it in any order, but do it in the easiest way for you. The easiest thing to do here is start by minusing 7. If it looks like it would be the easiest thing to do, it's probably the easiest thing to do in most cases. So I minus 7 on each side. I'm canceling my 7s. Bring down my 3x equals 19 minus 7 is 12. Now we can divide by 3 on each side. Cancel my 3's. X equals 12 divided by 3 is 4. And we get x equals 4. Simple. That's probably like the most basic kind of two-step equation that you're going to see. I've got another two-step equation here. Now, there are two ways you could do this. Oftentimes, well, let me see, first of all, we have a number next to parentheses with, or any term, next to parentheses with nothing in between it. Hopefully you recognize that also as multiplication. In fact, you look at this, it looks like the distributive property. I made a video earlier and we had a lesson on the distributive property. So this is a distributive property, and you can distribute. You can do 4 times x and 4 times 3 and make it a two-step equation. But you don't need to do that. So I definitely don't do that. If we have a situation that looks like this, where our variables in parentheses and we're multiplying, we can clear the parentheses. We can start by just clearing the parentheses. Divide each side by 4. Remember, 4 is being multiplied by everything, so we don't have to do x divided by 4 and 3 divided by 4. 4 is being divided by the quantity of x plus 3. Oh, I forgot my line again. So now I'll divide the other side by 4. Whatever I do to one side, I do to both. Now, the 4's cancel out. And now I can bring down x plus 3. I don't need parentheses anymore because there's nothing else there. I just have x plus 3 equals negative 24 divided by 4. You can put, I would suggest, and I usually like to suggest this to students, if you're dealing with negatives, don't be afraid to use a calculator. That is one of the things that trips up a lot of people. Oftentimes students, that's the only mistake they'll make, is with negative numbers, because mentally it's harder sometimes to process those. So it will give us negative 4. Just put it in a calculator. Negative 24 divided by 4 is negative 6. Now it's a one-step equation. We've got plus x plus 3. What's the opposite, or the inverse operation of plus 3? Of course, is minus 3. 3 minus 3 cancels. We have x equals negative 6 minus 3. Again, use your calculator. Just put negative 6 minus 3. You'll get negative 9. Oftentimes, students will get confused on that because they'll say negative 3 or positive 3 or 9. They'll say, oh, negative and a negative is a positive. Not when you're adding or subtracting in this case, but it's still adding. It's the same thing. Don't be afraid to use a calculator. We'll leave this up for just a moment in case you want to look at it, copy it down. Alright, it's on a video, so I can erase it now. If I knew how to do, if I had a camera to do fancy editing with, this is where I would do editing. But don't have that. Now, the last one that I have is one that looks like this. So, here's one where we have the quantity, we have x plus 2 on top of a fraction, 3 on bottom, and it equals 4. Now, again, just like on the first problem, we got rid of the constant first, and then we got rid of the coefficient. Well, I want to show something. If we had a problem that looked like this, here we would subtract first, and then we would deal with the fraction. That's not the case. X plus 2 over 3, what it really is this. It's x divided by 3, or x over 3 plus 2 divided by 3, or 2 over 3 equals 4. Now, this is obviously, it means, well, we don't want to get rid of this first because it's a fraction. This is where we want to do what we call clearing the fraction. So another way to think of it is, if you wrote this out, this is what it would look like. If you wrote it out without the fraction, again, notice how we have parentheses. We would want to clear the parentheses by timesing 3. So that's what we're going to do. The whole thing is being divided by 3, so we want to times the whole thing by 3, because that's an inverse operation. Our 3's cancel. You get x plus 2 comes down. We've cleared the fraction. We no longer have a fraction. And now we have x plus 2 equals 12. 4 times 3 is 12. Plus 2, what's opposite of plus 2, or the inverse of plus 2? It, of course, is minus 2. And this cancels. And we have x equals 12 minus 2 is 10. We have x equals 10. So, if you have a constant just sitting out by itself, no parentheses, it's not with a variable on one side of a fraction, get rid of that constant first. It makes everything easier. You don't have to, but it's easier. If you have parentheses, clear those parentheses first. You don't have to, but it makes everything easier. If you have this situation where you have about like here, a binomial on top of a fraction, and just a number constant on the bottom, clears the fraction first. Then you don't have to deal with fractions, otherwise you do. So take the easier road with the two-step equations. Make it easier for you. With practice, you'll see what, kind of experiencing what the easiest order of doing things is, and that's what I would always suggest sticking to. So, thanks for watching.